Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Modern Warfare Remastered In Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the tried and true MP5 submachine gun, one of my favorite weapons from the series and a classic weapon in general. Modern Warfare In Depth episodes are going to tend to be a little bit shorter because the game is older and a lot of the stats are known, because it's somewhat simpler, and because in a game with such a fast time to kill, comparative stats are often more important than minutia. So let's get started with the MP5 today. The base damage on the MP5 is 40, and it'll decrease linearly down to 20. At a range, it doesn't do the stair-stepping function. That means it will be 3 to 5 shots to kill, depending on how far away you are from the enemies. However, with stopping power in this game, that means that it can also deal 56 damage up close and decrease to 28 at a distance, meaning 2 to 4 shots to kill if you're running stopping power, which is going to be 1 less shot to kill at any range, and the opposite is true if you're fighting somebody that has the Juggernaut perk. It's going to be 1 more shot at any given range. Headshots deal a colossal amount of bonus damage, 140% or 1.4x damage, depending on how you want to look at it, which pretty much always makes them a good idea. Modern Call of Duty games have scaled down the headshot damage to 1.1, 1.05, something like that, but the headshot damage is very high in Modern Warfare Remastered, and outside of a few niche scenarios like maybe point-blank range, where it's still going to take 2 headshots to kill, headshots are always going to kill in 1 less shot, and especially if the enemy is injured or bleeding or just nicked a little bit, you'll definitely get some one-shot kills on them with headshots. I will give you a warning about the MP5 though. As much as I like it, it's kind of a pea shooter versus Juggernauts if you don't have stopping power. Without the stopping power perk, it can take up to 4 to 6 shots to kill, which in a game where a lot of weapons are killing 2 or 3 is not going to feel very appealing. This little SMG has surprising range, at least compared to modern Call of Duty games, but this range value here is more normal for the game. The maximum damage range, the range at which you can 2-shot somebody with stopping power, is 19 meters, which is pretty huge. The minimum damage range, the range at which it's dropping off to dealing its least possible amount of damage, is 25 meters, so there's a very narrow band where the weapon goes from incredibly effective to not very effective at all. It's got its own sort of sweet spot, and the weapon is definitely geared toward close quarters combat, so keep that in mind when you're using the MP5. However, with only 4 shots to kill at range, you can pick off assault rifle users that aren't paying attention. The suppressor affects the maximum and minimum ranges somewhat differently, but since it's a narrow band, the most effective and important way to think about this is that a suppressor will reduce your max damage range by about 50%. So it'll take that 19 meters down to about 10 approximately. That'll be your max damage range. It makes the weapon significantly less effective. It's not going to be the melt machine that it was before when you're running the suppressor. Rate of fire is somewhat more complicated. Its coded rate of fire is 800 rounds per minute, and just a little heads up, as far as I can tell, all of the stats in Modern Warfare Remastered are the same as the stats in COD 4. However, since it's running on the COD engine, your actual in-game rate of fire after frame rounding is going to be a little bit lower at 740 rounds per minute. However, if you run double tap on it, that's going to go up to 1071 rounds per minute, which is very, very crazy. However, not many people choose double tap over stopping power because double tap also increases your recoil, which for a weapon like this I tend not to like. Overall, the MP5 is one of the slower firing submachine guns in Modern Warfare, but it has high damage to balance that out and keep it at a very competitive time to kill. It's mostly a close quarters combat weapon, but its recoil is manageable enough to where you can get some picks at long ranges, but generally speaking, I wouldn't recommend it. The hipfire spread is very tight on the MP5. Most of the SMGs in this game have very tight hipfire spread, even better when you run steady aim, and it has a 200 millisecond aim down sights time like most of the SMGs in this game. However, that's not much different than the assault rifles, and it's definitely going to feel a little bit wonky in your hands. You're not going to be able to treat it like Black Ops 3 or COD Ghost SMGs where you run and hip fire very quickly or run and snap ADS people. The kind of sprint into combat is not going to be ideal for the MP5 because it handles a little bit slower than more modern Call of Duty SMGs. Comparatively, it has high recoil for the SMG class. The MP5, actually, mathematically speaking, kicks among the highest in the game, and if you really do some wall tests, you'll see that. However, there's something about this weapon that's a little bit magical, at least for me in my hands, so it still doesn't feel too bad. It doesn't feel out of control or unmanageable or difficult to deal with. Maybe I've played this game enough to where I have it mastered, but the recoil is higher than the other SMGs, so do keep that in mind. However, my experience is that it seems seems to have a first shot multiplier of sorts that it kicks more on the first 3 rounds than it does on the rest. So if you're going to go for long range shots, I find it better to actually just hold down the trigger and hose people and correct the shots as you go. When it comes to how this weapon should be used and what it's best at, I think the MP5 is best with a red dot sight or suppressor. By all means, you can run an ACOG sight on it, but I wouldn't recommend it. The ACOG sight's not really good for any of the SMGs on this game, and it pairs excellently with steady aim. It just allows you to hipfire people into oblivion very quickly. They don't expect it. You maintain your mobility. It's satisfying. I really enjoy steady aim as the green perk with the MP5. However, your real choice is going to be if you want to run it with a red dot sight and stopping power, or my personal favorite with UAV jammer and suppressor. I think that the MP5 is an excellent weapon to use in conjunction with the UAV jammer because the damage is high enough, it's easy enough to use, the suppressor is integrated into the weapon so it's not bulky or annoying, and it reduces the muzzle flash on the iron sights, which are already pretty good, and it can be very effective if you want a sort of stealth action class. That's the way I would recommend using it, but there's nothing wrong with the traditional red dot sight stopping power MP5. Guys, that's all for this episode of In Depth. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.